Not just a truce should be established in Ukraine, but a complete and final end to the conflict. Russian President Vladimir Putin said this after talks with Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban in the Kremlin on Friday. The flight with Orban landed in Vnukovo around noon on Friday, having managed to skip shortly before the hurricane with the name Orhan consonant with the surname of the Hungarian Prime Minister arrived in Moscow. Viktor Orban's visit was accompanied by a halo of mystery until the very last moment. Leaks in the Hungarian press about the upcoming negotiations appeared just the day before, but there was no official confirmation from either side. Dmitry Peskov, spokesman for the head of state, explained to journalists that Moscow had only received the offer from Budapest on Wednesday. Hungarian Foreign Affairs and External Economic Relations Minister Peter Szijjártó, who accompanied the Prime Minister on the trip, expressed hope that Orban's visit to Russia and his talks with Putin should be a step toward achieving peace in Ukraine. On Tuesday, July 2, Orban visited Kiev, where he discussed possibilities for resolving the conflict in Ukraine with Vladimir Zelensky. The Hungarian Prime Minister offered the Ukrainian president ceasefire terms, but the latter rejected them. Representatives of the EU leadership reacted extremely sharply to Orban's visit to the Russian capital even before it started. EU High Representative Josep Borrell said that the Hungarian Prime Minister had not received any mandate from the EU Council. The visit was solely within the framework of bilateral relations, and the presidency of the EU Council does not entail any external representation of the Union. And European Commission spokesman Eric Mamer quoted EC chief Ursula von der Leyen's reaction as saying, "Only unity and determination will lead to a comprehensive, just and sustainable peace." Immediately after the high-ranking guest arrived at the Kremlin, the talks began in a narrowly divided format. The Russian leader noted that Orban flew to Moscow not only as a longtime partner but also as a representative of the country that has held the EU Council presidency since July 1. "I hope we will have an opportunity to exchange ideas on building bilateral relations in this difficult situation, and of course, to talk about the prospects for the development of the biggest European crisis, in the Ukrainian direction," Putin said. The president recalled his recent speech to the leadership of the Russian Foreign Ministry, in which he outlined Moscow's position on a possible peaceful settlement. "And of course, I am ready to discuss this with you, to tell you about some nuances. I count on you to familiarize me also with your position, the position of European partners," he added. As for bilateral relations, Putin pointed out that the trade turnover with Hungary has collapsed by more than 35%, yet joint major projects continue. One of them is the expansion of the PAX nuclear power plant. In response, Viktor Orban said that this was his 11th meeting with Putin, but the first under new conditions. The number of those countries that can talk to both sides of the conflict is rapidly decreasing. Soon Hungary will apparently be the only country in Europe that can talk to everyone. The Prime Minister stated, adding that he wants to use this opportunity to discuss a number of important issues with the Russian president. The closed-door talks between Putin and Orban lasted almost 3 hours. Afterward, the politicians went out to the media in the Catherine Hall of the Senate Palace. Taking into account the fact that Hungary has been presiding over the Council of the European Union since July 1, Mr. Orban and I exchanged views on the state of affairs in relations between Russia and the European Union, which are currently at their lowest point, the Russian president said. Putin characterized the conversation as rich and useful. In his assessment, cooperation between Moscow and Budapest is based on the key principles of healthy pragmatism and mutual benefit. He also emphasized that he discussed with Orban the possible principles of the future security architecture in Europe. As for Ukraine, according to the Russian president, Kiev is still not ready to give up the idea of waging war until the victorious end. The very idea of cessation of hostilities is not allowed by the Kyiv regime also because in this case the pretext for prolonging martial law disappears, and if the martial law has to be lifted, it means that the elections, which were not held on time, will have to be held. But the chances of the Ukrainian rulers, who have lost their rating and legitimacy, to win them are close to zero, Putin explained. For his part, Orban said that the positions of the authorities in Moscow and Kiev are very far apart. A lot of steps need to be taken in order to get closer to the end of the war, he admitted. He said he wanted to hear and heard the Russian leader's views on 3 important issues. What Putin thinks about the peace initiatives available at the moment. His vision of Europe after the hostilities. The Hungarian Prime Minister pointed out that Europe needs peace. Over the last 2.5 years, we have realized that without diplomacy, without channels of communication, we will not achieve peace. Peace will not come by itself. We have to work for it, summarized Viktor Orban. He also thanked Vladimir Putin for an honest and open conversation.